This is my Leatherman Wave Plus, and if you've watched this channel for a while, you've probably seen it before. I've used the Wave Plus in quite a few other videos, usually as a comparison tool. I've compared other multi-tools against it for size, for the implements they contain, and for the way they work. But I've never given the Leatherman Wave Plus a video of its own. And considering this was the first plier-based multi-tool I bought for myself about 7 years ago, I think that's long overdue. A couple of years after I bought it, I lost it and I went out and bought another one, this black one. And then, of course, I found the original a couple of months later, hiding out in a fold in a pocket of my big rucksack. So that's why I have two. Interestingly, they came with different pouches. The newer one with a Velcro closure and the other with a press stud, and with different belt attachment systems on the back. And these were from the days when Leatherman actually included the pouch with the tool. If you buy a Wave Plus directly from Leatherman today, the sheath is sold separately, which for a full-size multi-tool like this, I think is a bit of a shame. Now, a lot has changed in those 15 years, and I've used a lot of other multi-tools since then. So rather than just putting the Wave Plus on the table, going through its tools and telling you what I think about it, I decided to do something a little bit different. I set myself a challenge. Over a few days, the Leatherman Wave Plus was going to be my only multi-tool. I wasn't going to invent jobs for it, and I wasn't just going to manufacture tests for it so I could say I've used every implement. I was simply going to carry it and use it every time I actually needed a multi-tool. But I was also going to use it as an excuse to tackle some jobs that had been piling up over the last few months. So I was going to do that and just see what happened. And as it turned out, I picked a rather interesting few days to do it.
Dios, qué cosa más brutal.
Ay, 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 hay que ponerse las gafas.
So yeah, that happened. The moon got in between Madrid and the sun and we had a full solar eclipse. And that few days when we had friends flying over from London specifically to see the eclipse, the Wave Plus ended up helping me repair a bike puncture, assemble a desk, fix a 35-year-old roller blind, prepare lunch, and make kindling for a barbecue. So after 15 years of having the Wave Plus, as well as this rather natty discontinued peripheral hex adapter for it, I thought time to give the Wave Plus its own spotlight and find out whether I still think it's as good as when I bought it 15 years back. So as I said before, I've often used the Wave Plus as a size reference when looking at other tools, so let's start with that. Now here we've got a keychain sized multi-tool. This is the Leatherman Squirt. Then something I would consider a compact multi-tool, the SOG PowerPoint. And then we move up to the full-sized Leatherman Wave Plus. And then finally a heavy-duty surge-sized clone multi-tool. So the Wave Plus sits pretty much where you'd expect for a full-sized multi-tool. Enclosed, it's about 4 inches long, 1.2 inches wide, and about 0.7 inches thick. That's roughly 10 by 3 by 1.8 centimeters. And it's not particularly light either. So this one comes in at 241 grams, as does this one, which is about 8.5 ounces. So the Leatherman Wave Plus is certainly pocketable, but you're not going to forget it's there. So I got my first Wave Plus when I wanted a plier-based multi-tool, and these are proper full-size pliers. You've got needle nose pliers at the front, a larger gripping area behind, and then soft and hard wire cutters. In fact, while we're here, there we go. And after all of these years, both of mine are still perfectly aligned. The tips meet exactly where they should. I've certainly not babied them. This last week I used them to undo some tough knots in some webbing and to pull rusty nails out of pallet wood. And when one nail was particularly stubborn, I just turned the wave around and gave it a whack with the plier head. Obviously this isn't a hammer, but for a straightforward job like that, I've got no problem using it as well. The handles on these are very comfortable as well. The edges are nicely rounded, and the inch and millimetre markings along here give a little bit of texture to the grip. So even when you're putting some force through the pliers, they're still comfortable to use. Moving to the outside, we've got 4 tools that can be accessed without opening the Wave Plus. First, there are 2 locking blades, a plain-edged blade and a fully serrated blade, and I think both of these are very good. Now, this is a nice detail. You can tell which is which when closed. The serrated blade has these ridges, whereas the plain edge blade is smooth here. I put the plain edge blade through a slightly unconventional test while making kindling for the barbecue. Batoning with it open at 90 degrees wasn't particularly stable. There's obviously no lock in the 90-degree position, but it did eventually get the job done. And the serrated blade made very short work of this plastic bottle, which I turned into a makeshift trough for cleaning the derailleur on my son's bike, so I've got no complaints about either of the blades. Then we've got the wood saw, and again there's nothing wrong with the saw itself. It worked very well on this dry pallet wood. My question is whether I actually want a permanent wood saw occupying one of these 4 outside positions, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Because the 4th outside tool is the file, and this is where we have a much bigger problem. Now, before I start upsetting all of the diamond file fans out there, I should say that I actually think most of this file is excellent. The crosscut file has plenty of bite, removes material very effectively, and I can't fault it in any way. Even the narrow edge is filed. And if push comes to shove, it's aggressive enough to work like a very light duty saw. My problem is specifically with this side, the diamond file. And just listen to that, it's a seriously abrasive file. And you've even got this useful filed edge. But then we get to the diamond coating. And remember, I've got 2 Wave Pluses. These are the diamond files on both of them. Now, I know plenty of people love these diamond files, and some people get years and years of use out of them, but that hasn't been my experience. On both of mine, I found that the diamond coating wore off surprisingly quickly, and now you'd have a hard time knocking the skin off a rice pudding with either of them. And I'll take some responsibility for that as well. It's very easy to look at a diamond file and think, that will shave this down nicely, when actually the crosscut file on the other side might have been the better tool for the job. But you don't get that dope moment until afterwards. You finish the job, you're feeling rather pleased with yourself, quickly glance in horror at the newly absent diamond coating, and fudge. And that's really my problem. It's not that I don't like diamond files, I do. I just don't necessarily want to enter into a lifelong commitment with one. I'd prefer a relationship where when things get a little worn out, we can both move on. No hard feelings. And that's why, for me, a diamond file makes much more sense as replaceable inventory. Now, this is the Roxxon Flex, and I've deliberately chosen this tool because it's actually pretty similar in overall size to the Wave Plus. There's less than a centimetre between them in terms of length. But here, I've got a T-shank holder. Now, there is a limitation to this system. Only relatively short T-shank blades can stay fitted and still allow the multi-tool to close. Fit something longer, a full-sized wood saw for example, and you're probably going to have to carry that separately. But if I'm carrying this in a pouch anyway, I don't see that as a huge problem. For me, the advantage isn't that every T-shank tool can live permanently inside the multi-tool. It's that when I need a different saw or file, or when one wears out, I can change it. Now, I'm not suggesting you could simply take this mechanism and drop it straight into the Wave Plus. There's obviously engineering considerations to take into account in the handles and the pivots. but it does demonstrate that the concept of a T-shank exchanger isn't solely the domain of heavy-duty multi-tools, and it's certainly not a new idea for Leatherman. The Surge was already using a T-shank exchanger back in 2005. That's 13 years before the Wave Plus appeared in 2018. So for me, rather than permanently dedicating one outside position to a file and another to a saw, I'd rather combine those jobs into one replaceable T-shank position, and that would give us another position to play with, because there's one tool I really do miss on the Wave Plus, an awl, which on most full-sized and even some compact multi-tools is so common as to be almost a no-brainer. But I wouldn't simply replace the file with one little awl. That would be a pretty spectacular waste of one of these large outside positions. I'd be thinking more along these lines. Now this is the Aitor Gran Capitan, and this one fairly thin implement manages to incorporate several different functions along its length. Now I'm obviously not suggesting Leatherman copy this particular tool, but the principle is interesting. Give me a thin outside opening multifunction implement with a proper awl at the tip, something I can use for punching pilot holes in wood or plaster, and then make decent use of the rest of that piece of steel as well. So if I were redesigning the Wave Plus for myself, I'd keep the two excellent blades. I'd combine the saw and the file into a replaceable T-shank system, and I'd use that fourth position for some kind of multifunction tool built around a proper awl. Now there is another very small tool on the Wave Plus that isn't, shall we say, universally loved. And you might think I'd sacrifice it to make room for that awl. I wouldn't. This little double-ended micro driver is actually something I find extremely useful. It's reversible. We've got a tiny Phillips on one end and a Flathead on the other. And just like Leatherman's larger removable bits, it's been flattened down considerably to save space. It's not a conventional full thickness screwdriver bit, but for what this is designed to do, that's not really an issue, because these are all mine. Computer glasses, reading glasses, and my not bumping into stuff general purpose varifocals. And if you've ever spotted a continuity error in one of my videos where I've mysteriously changed glasses between shots, that's because I sometimes forget which ones I'm wearing. So yes, I absolutely think that the Wave Plus should have an awl. But I don't want an awl instead of the micro driver. I want an awl as well as the micro driver. And if I were redesigning the Wave Plus for myself, combining that permanent saw and file into a replaceable T-shank system is where I'd start looking for the space. Of course, you may disagree. Leatherman may disagree. And judging by how long they've been making successful multi-tools, they probably know a fair bit more about designing them than I do.
Leatherman Wave Plus sandwich making.
Before we go on with the other implements, I need to backtrack to the blades. Both of the blades are made from 428C stainless steel. It's not a premium or exotic blade steel, but for a multi-tool I think it's a good choice. It's tough, corrosion resistant, and relatively easy to sharpen. Although the trade-off is that it won't hold an edge as long as some of the harder steels. But after 7 years of using these blades, I've got no complaints. And something else that the Wave Plus gets very right is that all of the implements lock in position. The 4 outside opening tools use liner locks, and the tools on the inside lock as well. So whether you're cutting or sawing or using a screwdriver, you're not relying on spring tension to keep the implement open. And on a full-sized multi-tool, I think that's exactly how it should be. So let's have a look at the rest of the inside. And probably the inside tool I've used the most over the years is this one, the bit driver. Like the micro driver, Leatherman saves space by using these flattened, double-ended bits. You don't get the depth of a conventional 1/4 inch hex bit, but you do get 2 screwdriver heads in very little space. And during this little experiment, this got quite a workout. I used it with a Leatherman ratchet to put together this metal and glass desk. Right, this pile of what looks like junk in the corner is actually a desk that we inherited, and this has been here for 3 or 4 months. So this needs to be assembled using the Leatherman Wave Plus. This is one thing that Leatherman could have done better, is that this hex adapter of theirs should have a lock at the 90-degree angle as well. But other than that, that's the only gripe I've got. Right, so the desk is done. And it also came out when I tackled a stuck roller blind that's been waiting rather longer than I'd care to admit. And while I was doing those 2 jobs, I also dug out something rather interesting. This is an old discontinued Leatherman 1/4 inch bit adapter. And unlike the flat bit system, this takes proper full-size 1/4 inch hex bits. And now for the clever bit. It fits between the handles of the Wave and gives you 3 working positions: in line, an intermediate angle, and a full 90 degrees when you want considerably more leverage. So I've effectively got 2 generations of Leatherman's answer to the same problem sitting right here. And although the ratchet is obviously the more convenient option, I still rather like this old thing, especially when I need to do some heavy work and get some good torque down on whatever thing I'm trying to screw in. So we've covered most of the Wave Plus now, but there are still a few tools tucked away that we still haven't looked at properly. And we'll start with the scissors. So the scissors are small, they are spring loaded, and like the other implements on the Wave Plus, they lock into position. They're not enormous, but for the sort of everyday cutting jobs I'd expect from multi-tool scissors, they work perfectly well. Most importantly, the spring is reliable and not stored under tension, which is something I wish Leatherman had applied to a revised model of the Squirt PS4, instead of just discontinuing it. That was quite impressive actually. I didn't expect it to get through this webbing quite so easily. Let's try it with some inner tube material. So there you go. So all in all, the scissors are pretty good, if a little bit on the small side for a full-size multi-tool. Okay, what's next? There's a fairly substantial flathead screwdriver, and because this is quite a solid piece of steel, this gets used the world over for a bit of light prying duty. Well, within reason, obviously. And then we've got this, what is known as the Eagle's Claw. This gives us a can opener, a bottle opener, and a wire stripping notch, all in one little combination tool. Now, I've already given this a pretty thorough workout in another video facing off against the Victorinox can opener. I'll leave a link up here and in the description. So after all that, I think it's worth putting the Wave Plus into a bit of perspective. This certainly isn't Leatherman's newest multi-tool anymore, but according to Leatherman themselves, it's still their best-selling multi-tool. And that says a lot. This is a design that has been around for years. It's tried, tested, even copied, and in my experience at least, extremely reliable. I've got two of them here that have seen years of regular use. And apart from my rather knackered diamond files, there's very little wrong with either of them. So after relying on the Wave Plus again for a few days, do I still rate it? Absolutely. It's not perfect, I'd like an all, and you already know what I think about that diamond file. But once I stopped reviewing it and simply started using it, it did exactly what a good multi-tool should do. It made itself useful. And I couldn't have picked a much more memorable week or so to put it through its paces.
Qué bonito.
Qué bonito, Dios.
Dios, qué cosa más brutal.
En Júpiter no lo vemos, tendría que estar por ahí.
Oye, qué barbaridad.
Ya, mi móvil ha hecho como una puta mierda.
Qué brutal.
No sale bien la foto.
No.
Qué barbaridad.
Ay, 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 hay que ponerse las gafas.
So would I still recommend the Wave Plus? Yes, without hesitation. And next time I'm going in a rather different direction. This is the 93mm Victorinox Pioneer X. No pliers, no bit driver, and a much simpler tool set. Let's see how I get on with this one. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe, and thank you very much for taking the time to watch it. And I look forward to seeing you again on the next one. All the best. Bye-bye.